Kia ora koutou. Nā nui te mihi atu ki a koutou katoa anō. Huhana Smith tōku ingo anō Ngāti Tūkore he Ngāti Raukua ki hau. Karanga atu au ki a koutou katoa I tēnei ata. Ka nui te mihi atu ki a koe hoki Jess. Kei runga a Zoom. Māku e tīmata me tētehi whakatauki mō tēnei panel. Te toto o te tangata he kai. Te oranga o te tangata he whenua he onioni. While food provides the blood in our veins, our health is drawn from the land and the soils. So I think it's really appropriate that we begin with a whakatauki like that because we have a very impressive panel for you this morning. With the concerns for kai sovereignty, food insecurity, concerns about waste, the food production systems, broken systems, and then having three highly effective women come to kind of present to you this morning. So I'm conscious we have Angela Carter in the room, who is from Kiwi Harvest, and who has led some exceptional kind of changes in the way we attend to food waste, food insecurity in communities, food rescues, food hubs, and I mean this is the thing that's really expanding across the country now. Lots of local food hubs emerging. So it's with great pleasure that we'll be able to talk to and hear about Kiwi Harvest to the New Zealand Food Network. I'm also privileged to have been working with Lucy Burkett, Associate Professor Lucas Burkett from Massey University. And Lucy worked on a recent project of ours. I'm part of a research team. We did the Mea Whakaoreore Tātou, mobilising mapping technologies for the benefit of our coastal farm, Tahamata Incorporation. And I think if you had the pleasure of seeing Kathy Tate-Jameson yesterday, she's the chair of that farming incorporation. So Lucy worked with us in analysing complex data and overseer in helping us map and also acknowledge emissions reductions for productivity for our farm. So a fantastically complex project, but really cool. And then we will start with Jess this morning, but ngā mihi aroha ki a koe anō, Jess. No Ngāti Huirapa Kujarati, she is a Ngāi Tahu leader, she's a hua parakore grower, she's a major leader in food farming, researcher, author, leader in Māori sovereignty, Indigenous food sovereignty movements across the world. She's written great books, and I think the recent one, Pātaka Kai, Growing Kai Sovereignty, is a particularly stellar publication. But all of these women are combining their efforts this morning to kind of see ways through we're rebuilding broken food systems. So I think without further ado, we will turn to Jess and me te mata tātou. Kia ora e hoa.
O te me tūtahi he tuku mahi ki a koutou, kua hui hui mai nei I tēnei ata. Mahi atu ki a koutou I tēnei rā hirahira, te rā o te koroneihana, kei Waikato, kei tūranga waiwai marae. Mahi atu ki a koe huhana, mo te whakatauki I tika tēnā, me tika tēnā ngā kupu katoa I roto I tēnei whakatauki. My apologies, I'm not there in person. I put my back out, so I couldn't get in the car to drive up. So very grateful to the organisers for enabling me to be able to Zoom this morning. And just bear with me just while I get my PowerPoint up. Okay, ka pai. Just holler out if anything goes wrong with the slides. I'm talking to a blank screen, which is always interesting when I know there's lots of you in the audience today. So the title of my kōrero today is Rebuilding Our Broken Food Systems to Feed Communities Again. And that's the mahi that I've been doing probably for the last 20, 25 years. Really emerged through my doctoral studies in about 2000 when we had a Royal Commission on Genetic Modification. And I saw the threats to our food system through the commodification of seeds by global corporates, particularly through GMOs and through what I would describe as biopiracy, so patenting life forms. So ko waio, or ko waia maua, ko taku hōrangatira ko Joe Smith. I'm speaking today wearing the hat as a founding trustee of Papa Whakarito Charitable Trust that I run with my wife, Jo Smith, who is an associate professor at media studies at Te Herenga Waka I used to work in the academy. I now call myself a recovered academic. I work outside of the university system as an independent kaupapa Māori researcher. We really work at that praxis end where we live on a beautiful 12-acre farm that has been hua parakuri verified for the last about 13 or 14 years. And so that gives us an opportunity to put our research work into practice and to invite people up to the farm to come to share in some of the methods that we use for elevating the mana of Hiniahoni, our soils, the work that we do around Indigenous seed saving, and of course, Kai sovereignty and all of the Indigenous politics that come with that. As many of you may know, our house burnt down towards the end of last year, so it's always a bit of a fracture for me to see this photo, but there's a real lesson for that in us, and that's really about resilience. All of our seeds were stored in our hui room at the back of the house, and when the house burnt down, we lost all of our heirloom seeds, and also to the seeds that other Indigenous communities had shared with us as well. One other thing to share on that is when the house did burn down, and it was a real crisis and a big shock for us, it was our food farming community and friends who came straight away with food, with resources, with pipes to get water going again. So, you know, food is more than food, a commodity. Food is actually a way to connect back with communities. So one of the things, and Huhana mentioned it, is that we undertake kaupapa Māori research. We are really big on telling our stories, telling kaupapa Māori stories of hope and well-being through food. And we also too run a range of educational programs and courses up at the farm as well. And our website addresses are there, so you can find out some more information on that. And I'm just going to do a bit of a plug because this beautiful new puka puka that was funded through a 3-year Marsden grant from the Social Sciences panel has just come out at the beginning of the year, and this is about growing Kai sovereignty and really being inspired by the communities, diverse communities that are around Aotearoa standing up our food systems again. So I'm just going to take a little, probably about 3 or 4 minutes more, just to talk a little bit more about our standpoint and what we do, because it provides context for the rest of our kōrero, which really presents the findings from that Marsden-funded research that we published in Pātaka Kai. So some of the other things we do, as I mentioned, is we run online courses. And the reason that we do this is that in the food, seed, soil sovereignty kind of infrastructure in Aotearoa, there's a lot of information that is acultural in a way. It's probably the best way to describe it. And what we saw was that there's a real need to develop kaupapa Māori infrastructure and courses that can speak kaupapa and relevance to our people, Māori communities, as well as everybody else as well, as a way to tūhono, to connect Māori back to their food system. So these courses are also online. And again, that's that kind of research translation end of taking what we know about growing clean kai. I've worked in the hua parakuri space for 20 years and soil sovereignty, and taking that to a practice end so that it's not just theoretical and sits there on a shelf or behind paywalls and journal articles, but it actually provides a way for people who engage with them to hikoi te kōrero, to walk the talk, to be able to put it into practice. And then, of course, our beautiful TV series that dropped last year on Whakapapa Māori, Hua Parakuri, Rebuilding Our Broken Food System. So made in partnership with Māori Land Films as well as Storybox, but this is a 8-part episodic series that works with other growers or takes you on a journey around the 6 kaupapa of Hua Parakuri to understand how other growers are expressing hua parakuri or kaupapa Māori values in their food and farming systems. And I think episode 2 is with Kathy up at Biofarm. And if you haven't seen it already, I really encourage you to have a look and to have a watch of it. You know, as we're trying to reimagine what our food systems are going to be like in the future, the power of storytelling, to be able to see, to be able to hear, to be able to feel it, our wairua, is really important. So that TV series sits on on the Whakata Māori, the Māori Plus website. And actually we just put in for another tono of funding for a new series based off our book Pātaka Kai with the subtitle Breaking Up with the Supermarket, because I think that's exactly where we're at the moment, time to break up with the supermarket. So Papatūānuku Kōkiri Marae, champions in South Auckland working at a community level, not just growing food, but growing community wellbeing through reconnecting people with their reo and their tikanga. And their doors are always open for whānau and community. So it's a really amazing initiative that they have going on up there. And we profile them in episode 3 of that Māori Plus, of that series that's on Māori Plus. And very lucky we got to go to India to meet with Dr. Vandana Shiva, who over the course of my academic career and research and writing career has been a shining light for me. I think I first met her 30 years ago when she invited me to share a talk at a conference called Women, Ecology and Development, speaking truth to power, calling out capitalist patriarchy and the ongoing commodification of our seeds and our food systems, and coming back to that absolute essence of that single seed as providing hope when it's held in the hands of communities, to be able to be shared, to be planted, to reap the harvest, and then to be able to save the seeds. So I think that's episode 5 in the series as well. One of the things that we do through our research work, and while we're also too farming and growing food and rebuilding a house, one of the things that we do is we continue our activism work and continue to make connections internationally as well. So I think there's something really powerful and definitely of relevance to the SDGs. When we're able to, as Māori, go and connect with Indigenous peoples overseas, it gives us a different perspective. It opens up possibilities for seeing things that we don't see in Aotearoa, which paves the way for new initiatives to be stood up. So last year we invited Vandana Shiva to Aotearoa to present at a conference called He Whenua Rongo. She graciously accepted. And then at that conference, the seed was sown, excuse the pun, to develop a Manawahine declaration for seed and soil. So a Māori women's declaration for seed and soil. So when nation states stop listening to the voices of Indigenous peoples, of Indigenous women, then we need to still find a way to have our voices heard, or to put a po in the ground around these are the things that are really important and these are the things that we oppose. And that's the work that the declaration does. If people are interested, it's available on the Trust website as well, so you can access that there. We also do have a short film of that haerenga as well. Kia ora hui hana ka kite Aotearoa ai. Just going to flick through these slides quickly because it gives you a bit of an idea of some of the journeys we've been on overseas. So this is a seed bank in Onondaga in America, Turtle Island, where they're saving their heirloom seeds, their tupuna seeds of their corn. Angie Ferguson, over 3,000 varieties of corn that they're saving. And so these are the things that I think are really important for us in our food systems in Aotearoa, to take the seeds back off the capitalist patriarchy and to start to stand up community, Māori, hapu, whānau, iwi-led seed banks. So one of the things I often say about food systems is for Māori, they require us to eat colonisation and whiteness in our everyday, refined white sugars, refined white flours. And so if we talk about decolonising, then we need to think what decolonisation means in relation to our food systems. It'll be no surprise to you, those that are in the audience today, that, I'm just going to flash these bullet points up, but I mean, Aotearoa, we produce enough food to feed 50 million people. We export it all offshore, most of it offshore, which includes our best soil microbes, our clean water, our clean air, and yet we can't still feed the 5 million people in our country. So in our research, we returned to try and understand what a Māori food system looks like. And Johnson Whitihira, who we worked with in our Marsden project, through the course of the project, we developed this image. He developed this image in partnership with us to understand what a Māori food system looks like, connected in the cultural landscapes of Ranginui at the top, Papatūānuku at the bottom, and then, of course, all of these tiki figures represent the different cultural placeness and diversity that Māori have in their food systems across Aotearoa. So I'm just going to finish on this slide and just share with you what we learned in our research of Pātaka Kai. The first thing is we come to understand, or it was affirmed, that food is connected to wairua and whakapapa. That food is not something that's just a commodity, devoid from connection to the soils or the seed or to the cultural landscapes of Hiniahuone or Tāne Mahuta, but it's deeply connected to wairua and whakapapa. That intergenerational practices of utu are really important in rebuilding our broken food system. So these ways of creating different trade economies outside of capitalist systems. We also too learned that with the growers that we talked to, that it was incredibly important to have an everyday connection with Māori Kai to be food sovereign. So it's not just something that you're just going, oh, I will, kia ora, e rua minati, haere tonu. So it's not just something that you go, oh, I'm going to be food sovereign today, and I'll go out and do my food sovereignty. But it really is, like our tūpuna, this way of being again, about coming back to have this everyday connection with our Māori Kai. And then the last thing in terms of the big themes that we mapped through our project was the need to continue to influence policy and political settings. And for us, it's, in our standpoint, that's by amplifying and elevating kaupapa Māori through various diverse ways, publishing books, journal articles, storytelling through TV series, short films like the one we made when we went up to India last year, so that journey and that haerenga didn't just stay within that whānau who came with us, but we had that opportunity through digital storytelling to be able to share it further. And just in finishing, the last thing I suppose I want to leave is the importance of building intergenerational sustainability in this movement. So when we went up to India last year, we took some of the rangatahi from this beautiful Māori here, Papatūānuku Kōkiri Marae, up to India with us. So we had some funding in our charitable trust which enabled that to happen. And so then that meant that we are sharing that experience, that where, for me, I really want to hook the next generation of rangatahi into being the next kai, seed and soil sovereignty activists in Aotearoa. So, I'm sure as you're all aware, food is really complex and there's so much that we can talk about. So I really appreciate your attention early on a Friday morning. So ka nui te mihi aroha ki a koutou. Right on time, hūhana.
Miharo ana e hoa. Right on 15:07. Well done. Ka pai. Well, we will call on Angela now to come up, please.
Kia ora everyone. My name's Angela Calver. I'm the current CEO at Kiwi Harvest. Have been in the food industry for, about 100 years now. Unfortunately, the hair and makeup artist wasn't available this morning, but here I am. 16 years at McDonald's in the supply chain. There's a very long conversation I'm sure we could have about McDonald's. At the time I left, we were rated the second most efficient supply chain in the world behind Apple, and we were feeding 69 million people a day. So understand what it is to have a supply chain to feed a large amount of people. Through the magic of life, I have ended up at Kiwi Harvest, and I told our founder, Deb, who started it in 2012 in Dunedin, that this will be my take-me-out-in-a-bag job. I'm not leaving. I love what we do. I love the way we do it, and I feel very privileged to sit in the seat that I have. So at Kiwi Harvest, we see that we play into 4 parts of the SDG goals. and I'll quickly walk you through why we see that. Our mission is to redirect excess food to those in need and reduce the negative impact of sending the excess through the waste stream. We exist to address two problems. We have food insecurity that, in my world, having been around the world, and you can only operate from Angeland, where I live, the fact that we have 25% of children reporting to the Ministry of Health that they live in a house where food runs out sometimes or often in New Zealand is disgusting and needs addressing urgently. The fact that we have an estimated 30% of our food going to the waste stream, that is, and about 60% of that is edible, that's unacceptable as well. So Kiwi Harvest exists to address those two issues that we have in New Zealand. Food insecurity is becoming critical. Like I say, 25% of children, not okay. And these are just some of the graphs around where we're going, which is not okay either. So and I'm sure a lot of you understand this, if food waste was a country, it would be the third biggest emitter globally, behind China and the US. Also, when you throw away food, and I often go to schools and talk to kids about, you know, when you throw away that carrot, all the things that you're throwing away, the seed, which, much respect to Jessica, love her work, the seed, the labour to plant it and keep it watered and to grow it, the land, the energy, the labour, the capital, the transport to take it across Auckland or whatever community you're in. So you're actually throwing away a lot more than just a piece of food. And MFE, the Ministry for the Environment's last estimate was that there is 103 million kilos of food going to landfill in New Zealand, with about 60% of that being edible. So that is just from the supermarket or the retailer back in the supply chain. And these are some of the global estimates. So 21% in farms, 14% in manufacture, 16% in food service, and 12% in food retail. So a lot. Some numbers as thought starters for you. So 103 million kilos, 60% of it edible. At a 450 gram meal size, that's 137 million meals. It's enough to feed 125,000 people for a year. That's just in our waste stream in New Zealand. So that's why we see we could easily address the issue that we have with food insecurity with our excess in New Zealand. And having come from a supply chain where we're feeding millions of people, I'm sitting in the right chair to make it happen in New Zealand, working hard on it. The board actually asked me what our media strategy was, and I just said, well, I'll go anywhere and talk to anyone, because one little spark leads to a fire, right? So we would love to see it legislated in New Zealand, this food recovery hierarchy. So food is meant to be grown to be eaten, to enable farmers to do more, to be more environmentally responsible. But if it cannot be sold, for whatever reason, then it should be diverted to people. Not animal feed, not landfill. And at the moment, unfortunately, the cheapest option is to send it to landfill. So we need that to change so that we can divert that food to people. Food rescue is a fairly new industry with the Good Samaritan clause having recently gone into our Food Act. That makes our manufacturers, retailers immune from prosecution should there be an issue with the food. But food rescue sits outside of the Food Act because we don't trade it. We don't charge to pick it up. We don't charge to drop it off. So there are no standards. Anyone can start food rescue. What we're trying to do is to create standards and to get food rescue put as part of the food supply chain so that every person or every organisation with a food licence must work with a food rescue to sell their food first, but then to direct it to food insecure people. So Kiwi Harvest at the moment, we have 14 vehicles on the road. I say vehicles because we do have e-bikes with trailers on the back of them that go around collecting food in Wanaka and Queenstown. We have 5 branches, 2 in Auckland, 1 either side, so we're not having to contend with traffic. Queenstown, Invercargill and Dunedin. We receive food from 370 food donors, and we direct that food to 230 charitable organisations, so Salvation Army, Women's Refuges, food banks, alternative education providers, and we do qualify all of those people because we must look after the brands of the food donors. If there was to be a food safety issue, which unfortunately I have been involved in food safety issues where we have killed people basically with food. It's never where it happened, who did it. It's always the media go after the biggest brand. So as a food rescue, we need to look after those brands and protect them through the supply chain. So we have very good supply chain and logistics practices. We are New Zealand's largest food rescue. We have in the last 2 years grown our volume by 52%. So we've gone from doing about 2 million kilos a year to over 3 million now. And we've done that by bringing food donors in and showing them that we do have good standards and practices. So we collect food in these big check bins. They take about 500 kilos of food, take lots of carton damage. The distribution, one of the distribution centres that we deal with, we're sending about 10 skip bins of carton damaged product to landfill every week. They're down to 1 now. So we bring it in and our volunteers sort through it, make sure that we recover what food that we can out of there. And as you can see, there's quite the range of food. About 45% of what we do rescue is fresh fruit and vegetable though. So from a nutrition point of view, when we do give food, we give across the nutritional basket, with more of it being skewed to fresh fruit and veg. No problem. And we look at it that we're not just supplying these charities with food. Jessica's right, food is more. A lot of these, the charities that we supply, they talk to us about the fact that people come to them because they can't feed their family. So give them a box of food, get rid of that stress. Then if they come back, all of the agencies that we deal with offer other wraparound services. So employment help, addiction support, advocacy, health and wellbeing, education, other social services. So we look at it that we're enabling these charities to do more with their budget, because the reality is it always comes back to the money. If I could get unlimited funding, I literally could solve our issues in New Zealand quite quickly, and I would, but we're a charity, so we have to go out and fundraise to make it happen. But supporting us means that people are supporting 235 charities, other charities around New Zealand. Talking about our volume being increased and there's more to do, right? 60 million kilos out there, and we're doing 3. So we have quite the mountain. But as I say to my staff, only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. Well, not a real elephant. We talk about Kiwi Harvest superpower is 5, 4, 3. So for $5 given to us, we can feed a family of 4, 3 meals because the food is donated. So that's how we can do that cheaply. I can't even get a coffee for $5 in New Zealand, in Auckland anymore. So we do quite well. We're a good investment. We're always looking for volunteers if you'd like to get involved. Like I say, our media strategy is that I'll go and speak anywhere. So if you would like to get someone from Kiwi Harvest along to speak, we're more than happy to do that. And we do see our volunteers as superheroes. So if you want to come along and volunteer and dress up, then we have costumes available. And that's it from me.
Kia ora, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity this morning. Getting our food systems right. So this is a topic that I have always been really passionate about. I'm a soil scientist here at Massey University in Palmerston North, and improving the sustainability of our agricultural systems is something that I've been working on for the last 20 years. And I really appreciate the opportunity this morning just to talk to you about a really cool project that we've got here on campus. We've got sites here at Massey, but we've also got some sites at Lincoln University in Christchurch. And it's called Whenua Hamanu, and I'll talk to you about it. Before I change slides, I just wanted to highlight, I've purposefully chosen these photos on our front slide. So the first one on your left is a great example of diverse pastures, increasing the diversity of our pasture systems that supply food for our grazing animals, which is a really big industry in New Zealand. The next photo is a photo of our youngest daughter, Elsie. I've dragged her along one weekend to help with earthworm sampling, just so we could get our samples finished before the rain. And then the bottom photo is a photo of some ewes grazing what we call a contemporary pasture, one that conventional farmers would use, but that pasture is being managed regeneratively, so you can see it's longer than what we might normally see. So just starting with some of the global challenges, so some of these Jessica touched on this morning. These are global challenges facing New Zealand agriculture as identified by our researchers, our industry partners and government here in New Zealand. No surprise that one of the biggest ones is climate change. Consumer preferences is another one, and greenhouse gas emissions. There's also big circles around changing diets and consumer preferences and the effect on market access. Some of the other bigger circles that we're particularly interested in is improving the sustainability of agriculture in New Zealand, our issues around water quality and availability, and also biodiversity. And within New Zealand, some of our national challenges, also sort of touched on by Jessica, degradation of water quality and also freshwater ecology in our agricultural catchments is a really significant issue, no surprises there. And similarly, erosion and sediment loss from our hill country farming contributes to some of these issues as well. Greenhouse gas emissions, so agriculture makes up more than 50% of our greenhouse gas emissions, and that's mostly from methane burped out by grazing ruminant animals. And this issue not only affects global climate change, but it's also affecting how we're farming in New Zealand. So already we're seeing shifts in weather patterns, changes in flowering of particular horticultural species. We're seeing changes in pest invasion, things like that, pests that we've never seen before. So, you know, really having a huge impact on how we are going to be able to grow food in the future. And also identified around this is one of the biggest challenges, I guess, for farmers themselves is this public perception of agriculture and farmers. And so the mental health of farmers in New Zealand is really at a critical point. And this is around this idea of social license to farm, and are they sort of meeting the community expectations around environmental protection and that sort of thing. Cost of environmental compliance has been also identified as a really big challenge for agriculture, although under the current government, that's changing quite rapidly. Animal welfare is a really important concern, and it was great to hear one of the students talk about that this morning. And of course, biodiversity. We all know that Western agriculture has had a huge impact on our biodiversity. So as a result of all of these challenges, the government, industry and researchers have been really interested in exploring some alternative options of agricultural management in New Zealand. And out of that has come a project called Whenua Hamanu. So its focus is around nurturing the land through exploring pastoral farming. It's New Zealand's biggest research project ever undertaken in the pastoral industry. It's funded by the Ministry for Primary Industries, and it goes for 7 years. And it's the biggest project not only on regenerative agriculture, but also on what we call contemporary or conventional agriculture. And so what we say is there's something in there for everyone. We've actually got the opportunity to really study the sustainability of both of these systems and really understand, where we've got some opportunities to improve. It's a really collaborative project, so involves other universities, what was previously known as the Crown Research Institutes, industry partners, and our key objective is really to scientifically assess the suitability of and relevance of regenerative agriculture in New Zealand. And the reason that's really important is that regenerative practice is being used in other countries around the world, but often going into quite degraded systems. So perhaps systems that have been under long-term cropping or arable systems, or really degraded, overgrazed environments. One of the interesting things about New Zealand is our pastoral systems. We have long-term pasture. Generally, that means that we have good rooting systems, lots of organic matter being returned to soil. And so generally our organic matter in soil is really high, and it's also, our soil health is generally quite good as a background. And we've also got animals grazing all year round. So we've got quite a different context, and so it's quite important that we sort of assess this from that perspective. Oh, I meant to say, so I did have a really cool little short video to show you, but unfortunately it's not working with the technology today. But if you're interested, on our Whenua Hamanu website, we've got quite a nice few videos just to introduce the project, lots of visuals to give you an idea. And just on that, if anyone's interested in the project, we've got a field trip this afternoon. It's being led by Edu Tate-Jamison, who's our operations manager. He's actually Kathy's son. And also Nick Snedden, one of our animal scientists. So make sure you join that. Okay, so a bit more detail. Whenua Hamanu, what are we all about? So we've got farmlet studies. So that basically means small-scale farm studies. And under these farm system studies, we've got different pasture treatments. So on the left, we've got a diverse pasture, which has got more species than our conventional pasture. So includes herb species, grasses, and legumes. And some of the characteristics of those pasture species is they have deeper roots and in cases different types of rooting structures. And then on the right we've got what we call our standard pasture. So typically New Zealand farmers have 2, maybe 3 species. So it's a ryegrass, perennial ryegrass, and a clover, usually white clover. And they also have good rooting systems, but usually not as deep and not as diverse. So we're really interested in looking at those 2 systems. And then we also have those under different management. So regenerative management is generally we have a longer rest period between grazing, so when the cows come in and graze. And we also leave more pasture behind. And so the reason for that is that we're hopefully returning some dead plant material onto the soil surface, feeding the earthworms and the microbes, and hopefully improving soil health. We also have low to no chemical or fertiliser inputs onto those regenerative systems, but we use biological inputs instead. Whereas contemporary systems, it's typical Industry management, typical grazing rounds, use of nitrogen fertiliser, that sort of thing. And this project, I mentioned it's 7 years, really comprehensive. We're pretty much measuring everything we can, both on the ground, above the ground and below the ground. So above the ground, we're looking at animal health, animal production. We're looking at Māotearoa. We're looking at interactions with farmers, economics. We're also looking at animal welfare. We're looking at pasture production, pasture quality. And then below the ground, which is the area I'm particularly interested in, is soil health, soil physical properties, soil fertility, soil biology, and also environmental impacts. And that's a really big one in terms of this project. So looking at the effects on leaching, greenhouse gas emissions, both from animals and also from soil. So let's have a look at what we're finding so far. So in terms of production, milk production, what we're finding so far is that the production per cow, I'm just going to talk particularly about the dairy production at the moment, that's really similar between the treatments. And that's a really good news story. What we are sort of finding is that there's no negative impact of increasing diversity in your pasture. And while for some people it might go, oh, well, no surprise there, actually for the industry, that's been a huge surprise, because when we went into this, we actually had to budget to pay the farms for lost production because everyone thought that we were going to reduce our production. So quite interesting to see that we haven't necessarily done that. When we do look at a production per hectare though, we have higher production on the more conventional systems, and that's because we have a normal sort of grazing round, whereas I mentioned the regenerative, we have a longer rest period between grazing, so that means you have to have less stock just to be able to achieve that. But that's quite cool to find that. Other interesting findings, we're finding the diverse pasture grows slower in the cooler months, and that means we've had to rethink how we manage those pastures, and we've even talked about moving our calving pattern just to sort of match that growing season, and I think these are some really interesting things that we need to be thinking about going forward to try and capture that production. But we're also finding more production in the summer months, and particularly in the last year, year 3, we found similar growing in the early part of the year, but the diverse pasture actually yielded more in the drier season. And that's got really interesting implications if we think of resilience of pasture systems. Because we've got more pasture species in these systems, when we get a dry period, the ones that are better adapted to dry conditions do really well. Whereas if we've only got ryegrass and white clover, neither of those species do well in dry conditions. So really interesting to think about what this means in terms of more resilient agricultural systems going forward. We've also found a difference between the fatty acid profile from animals grazing our diverse pasture, and this has got interesting implications in terms of products. And we found faster land growth under diverse pasture, so that's quite interesting. But these are things that we obviously need to have multiple years of data to give the industry confidence about. In terms of soil, one of the big things that we're looking at is soil carbon. Can these different pasture systems sequester more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, greenhouse gas, and store it in the soil? That's one of the biggest questions we've got around these systems. And so we took our baseline samples in year 1. We've just finished sampling year 4, just in the last week. We won't know whether we're having an impact for a while. I think it'll probably take until year 7. And the reason for that is we've already got quite high soil carbon levels under these pasture systems. So this is not an easy thing to sort of tease out, but we're really giving it a good go. I think we've got something like 1,700 soil samples to try and sort of tease this out. So it's a big challenge. Soil biology is another area that's really interesting and we're really focusing on. So earthworms, microarthropods, above ground insects, bacteria, fungi, microscopic worms called nematodes, which are really cool, by the way. We're not finding huge differences here. We are finding some differences, and we wonder whether over a longer period we might see some differences. But we're seeing really weird things, like we're seeing lower temperatures under our diverse pastures, particularly heading into the summer. And that's got really important implications if we're thinking about, soil health in general, but also, the resilience and soil moisture retention if we've got lower temperatures and soils that are buffered by these pastures and more material returning to the surface. Soil physical properties, so we're interested in the structure of the soil, compaction, but we're also really interested in how well these soils store water and also infiltrate water. And that has really important implications for resilience as well, because if these soils can actually, every time we get rainfall, if more water can go into the soil, that means that these systems will be more resilient as we go into perhaps drier climates. And in terms of the environmental footprint, so far we're seeing much lower nitrogen leaching rates under the diverse pastures under regenerative management. So not a huge surprise. We've got lower inputs, but really, really interesting. And these first 2 years, this was under the same stocking rate. So we removed that effect, but it's the other things that are causing this, which is really cool. And also in terms of nitrous oxide, so we've got 2 years of data, but only 1 year has been fully analysed yet. So in the first year, we found 60% lower nitrous oxide emissions under our diverse pasture compared to the standard contemporary treatment. So we're really excited about the opportunities there. Cool, so I'm just going to leave it here. This is just a slide of some of our industry partners. But yeah, just to summarise, we're really excited about the opportunities. It's probably going to be some of the little things that are going to be quite useful, I think, in terms of improving the sustainability of our pasture systems by possibly using some of these approaches. And we're really excited about the opportunity to encourage and provide data to encourage farmers to try some of these things, based on what we've been finding. So, thank you.
I think we've done a deep dive into a Mātauranga Māori world and a kaupapa Māori-led framework with hua parakore, and we've gone to systems like hyper-capitalist food systems like McDonald's, but what you've morphed it into was just an exceptional kind of change of pace and what needs to happen. So Angela, that was really, really good. And the haumanu, being able to get some changes happening through regenerative pasture and what changes that will make for agriculture in Aotearoa. I don't know whether I missed Kathy yesterday. She's my cousin. She's from Ngāti Tukura here, and she's our chair of our tribe's farm where have been doing big projects with Lucy. But I just think it's very interesting about what kind of systems we need to move to, people. And I would just welcome any questions, please. We've got Jess back up here, so please, there must be burning questions in the room. Right, Daniel, where are you? Daniel.
Yeah, over here. Kia ora, I suppose.
Do we need a mic? Sorry, Daniel, we need a mic so that everyone's... Thank you. All right. Kia ora.
Kia ora, everyone. My first question, I suppose, based on Jessica's talk there, is how can society sustainably support the various types of ecologically friendly local food systems that produce more than just kai, that are kind of social connections, health, resilience, and those other types of intangibles?
So that was directed directly to the panel?
Jessica, but anyone.
Jessica?
Ka pai. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, ka pai. Thank you for that question. Well, I think the answer to the answer is in your question there, Hoa, because as I said in my presentation, food is more than just a commodity or more than just food. It's actually a way to connect into tūhono and to bridge and build whanaungatanga. One of the other key findings from our project was we found that food is actually whanaunga. So when I put up that slide where I said, food is a way to connect with whakapapa and food is wairua, a way to connect with our wairua, food is actually our whanaunga. So if we think of food coming from our cultural landscapes as Māori, from the cultural landscapes of Hiniahuone, of our soils, then we have a direct whakapapa relationship. So in the communities that we work with, in the food, the market gardens, the small scale, the activities that are happening outside of the industrial food complex in Aotearoa, the communities are driving them, and the communities are binding together and connecting and working with other communities. Last thing that I'd say is I think we need to also to work on changing how we see things, like how do we see success? Because if we're wanting to stand up different types of new imaginaries in our food system, then what we recognise as success will be really different from the previous markers of success that we might have understood in our food system. I'll just leave it there. Yeah.
Kia ora.
This question's for any of our speakers, I think, or all. I think you did. You inspired us all and give us hope for the changes that are already happening and what more needs to be done. But really, does anyone know of a country which is doing far better than Aotearoa in terms of its food system, both through what the government's doing, has done or is doing with legislation, regulation, but also forms of support for organic, regenerative, sustainable agriculture? The nods from Jessica.
Yeah, well, I have one example, and it's in India, and it's the state of Sikkim. And so the whole state of Sikkim is an organic state, mainly because of its geographical boundaries, so it's bounded by mountains and rivers. But that's enabled the whole state just to be able to produce organic food in communities, support small-scale food farmers. So that's a really good example that I hold up. But again, I come back to the thing about changing the way that we're looking at things, because if we're looking at it at a national level, then we're still calling on the government to intervene, and the work that we're doing with Māori communities is really at that bioregional level. You know, the change that we need in our food systems is to stand up bioregional food economies.
I'll just add to that. From a food rescue point of view in France, it's not legislated, but you can't get a licence to be a supermarket if you don't have a food rescue partner, so that all of the supermarket excess in France goes to food rescue. We're asking the government via MPI and the Food Act to make it anyone with a food licence. So that's to manufacture, produce, retail, wholesale. So we're asking to go a step further than that. Like I said, we could have a whole conversation about McDonald's, but one of the things that it did allow is quite a lot of research papers available to us to read within the supply chain. And a very interesting doctor's what do you call them? That's them. Dissertation that I read, which has really struck with me for over 25 years, is by a human social economist guy who predicted stuff. And he talked about the globalisation of food and the food industry, and then things like pandemics, supply chain issues, and really predicted that food in 50 years would be very localised. So like the amazing work Jessica's doing, and that we would need to feed our people within our areas, definitely for fresh fruit and vegetable and meat. So, New Zealand, so well placed in that we manufacture a lot of food. Some estimates are 20 million, some are 40, some are 50 million people, but we really do have a great head start over a lot of countries to bring back to local. So, yeah.
Ka pai. Kia ora. Alan.
Kia ora. Thank you so much to all of you. That was so inspiring. I mean, it's so hard to think about, right? Because on the one hand, there's these incredible sort of bioregional scale, mahi that you're doing, but like as a country, I feel like 90% of food is exported, and that's still so caught up in this idea of that is the backbone of the economy and feels very difficult. And I think farmers are also caught up in that kind of capitalist debt trap. And so I'm wondering, like, what do you think the future looks like for Aotearoa's food system? Like, what does it look like? Does it look like actually saying, you know what, we need to move away from fat and dairy and move into a different kind of production? Does it look like saying, actually, farmers need to, I mean, there's been floated with all of the food price rises, this idea that maybe there should be some kind of thing where farmers have to have some food for the local population and not export stuff, or have to have a different price for local. Like, I'm just wondering, how do we deal with this? We've got this export-led system.
Any takers? Oh, someone up the back wants.
Can you hear me, Jess? Ngā mihi atu kia koe. We met in a previous life. My name's Iris Parham. I just want to... Oh, did you hear me?
Not really.
Ai, tēnā koe, Jess. We've met in a previous life. My name's Iris Parham. Ngā mihi atu kia koutou. I just want to tautoko what you're doing. It's about being able to walk out of your back door, be able to decide what you're going to have for breakfast because you've got spinach and the like, and also tautoko your papatuanuku concept and marakai. But just wanted to compliment you on your mahi, but also I'm not aware of whether or not you know the stretch of the work that you've done. So mahi atua, or kei atua, is a concept that's been incorporated in kura kaupapa Māori on the East Coast. You know. So they have a kei atua day. Mokopuna come to school. The teachers and the staff have a look at their lunch boxes. They take all of the produced, supermarket kei out, and they replace it with kei atua. Atua that is provided to us by our atua. Kei that's provided by our atua. But in addition to that, like you say, food is about whānau. These mokopuna drag their parents to the awa to be looking for pipi or anything that they could put in their lunchbox for their day. And so just want to mihi to you for all the wonderful work you do. Kia ora tātou.
We've got a gentleman wants to ask a question, and you might be wanting to answer that question that was asked before. Yeah.
Thank you. For me, it comes down to two words: expectation and equivalence. Expectation, an example would be, I had a sabbatical over in North Carolina. We saw big trucks going across. What's in the trucks? Lettuces. Lettuces you could buy for 30 cents back then that came all the way across the US. That's expectation from the consumer. So you have to try to teach the consumer to eat what's local and what's in season. The other one, equivalence, with regard to organics, regenerative farming. I had a PhD student about 15 years ago. We actually used the Massey farm when they had the organic farm there. There was no difference between organic milk versus conventional milk, apart from a couple of fatty acids in the fatty acid profile. Do people want equivalence, or should we try to get them to get around an idea that all food has its own life force? What do you think?
Jessica will answer that. Awesome. Go, Jess.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ai, ka pai. I can't hear you, Hana, but kei te pai. I'll just address the issue of equivalence very quickly, because I wonder on whose terms we are setting the framework for equivalence. Because although you might talk about fatty acids in terms of the difference between organic milk and non-organic milk, actually if we think about food as whanaunga, then I'm thinking about equivalence in terms of wairua and in terms of whakapapa and in terms of the whānau or the hapu that might have actually produced that milk. Yeah.
Koina. Kia ora. Oh, good, another question. Kia ora. Did you want to answer?
I just wanted to answer this lady's. Hello. Alice's question. I think we will never fix the food system while we commoditise it. As soon as it's a commodity, so one of the accounts I used to manage at McDonald's was Fonterra. Is there anyone from Fonterra in the room?
Over here.
Right.
I'm married to a dairy farmer.
Excellent. Right. We used to have very interesting conversations about why milk costs more than oil did. And milk was from a cow eating grass down the road, and oil was drilled in the Atlantic, manufactured and brought all the way to New Zealand. So there was a fair bit of head-butting with myself and Fonterra. But while we commoditise food, the expectation is that those growing and manufacturing that food will meet that commodity market price.
We're going to do one more question and then we'll wrap up.
Hi, my question's for Lucy Burkett, and it's kind of following on the Fonterra theme. We had Andrew Kempson talking about a bit of controversy around the use of the word regenerative, and he actually said at one point, we're using our customers' language back to them, which I found an interesting turn of phrase. And my question is there any move towards creating some kind of certification so that as a consumer you can say, well, similar to organics, that you can say that this product is returning carbon to the soil, essentially?
So there are these sort of certification schemes. There's one currently being developed in New Zealand. I can't remember the name of it. It's by a guy called Hugh Jelly, I think, based in Christchurch. I can look it up if you need. And internationally as well. So I think it's Gabe Brown in the US is developing a system there, or has already got a system. But I will say one of the real advantages of the regenerative movement, I guess, as opposed to organics, is that flexibility. Organics is awesome, but it is very restrictive. And one of the really cool things we see about not necessarily having a prescribed sort of system or way of doing things under regenerative management is that it's based on principles. So these are the things that we're trying to achieve, but how you get there can be a little bit flexible. And that is quite important because, if you think about animal welfare, if you get in a real pinch and you are running out of feed, but you can't bring in feed because it's not approved or whatever, is that really regenerative? So, we see this focus on principles, trying to achieve these objectives, but how you go about it is a little bit flexible, is a really positive thing. And I think that's the thing that farmers really have taken to in New Zealand and other countries.
Kia ora. Well, I think it's just home mai te paki. We need to wrap up now. Mi aroha ki a koe anō, Jess.